Okay, let's see, we have around 90 students, so just start, okay? All right, let's buy some time. How was your exams? How was your midterm exams for all the courses? Was it good?
Very good.
Very good, okay, that's good. And
Not very good.
pretty good. Okay, not really good, but it's okay, right? Anyway, it is very fast. Time flies, and you guys already passed the first half of the semester, isn't it? And yeah, for this course, you guys already learned the two chapters for the final exam, 5 and 6. Today, you guys will learn chapter 7, okay? And next week, you guys learn chapter 8 and 11. Then you're done for all of the lectures for the final exam. 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. Sorry, and 11. Okay, and after the next week, then you guys will have presentation already. It means that you only have 2 weeks left for the preparation of the group presentation. And so far, I got the email for the topic and opinion only from 10 groups. So we have 8 groups, or even more than 8 groups. Some of you don't have the group here. Let's say I will inform you guys later soon, but still, you guys, for those who haven't submitted the topic and opinion, please do it as soon as possible, okay? Otherwise, you don't have time for the preparation. Now, for today, let me start by sharing the slides. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Right, thanks. And so, as I mentioned just now, today we will learn about chapter 7, which is about analyzing the arguments. Okay, and we learn in chapter 3 or even 9 and 10 about the arguments, and then we learn about the tools to evaluate whether the arguments of categorical or proportional logics is valid or invalid. We use the Venn diagram and the truth table to come up with valid or invalid. But those tools cannot be used for other types of arguments, isn't it? We have different types of arguments. So in general, there are some kind of ways for us to analyze the arguments. Okay, and that is what chapter 7 about. So first of all, we need to understand what does it mean by analyze the arguments. So to analyze an argument, it means that we need to break the arguments into various parts. Okay, we learned in chapter 3 already, the arguments include premise and conclusion. So when we say we break the arguments into various parts, it means we break it into premises and conclusion. To see clearly, yeah, to see clearly, we analyze, so we want to see clearly what conclusion is for that argument and how are they, or how is it being supported or defended by the evidence, or on what grounds. So the conclusion and the evidence to be identified and analyzed. Okay, and in doing the analysis of the arguments, we need to consider in 2 ways. If it is the short arguments and if it is long arguments. So for the short arguments, we are going to say it's short or long. It doesn't mean that it has more or less words, or long or short passage. But the short arguments somehow very long passage, but the meaning, the content is easy, simple to understand. But for the longer arguments, even though sometimes it has less words than the shorter arguments, however, the content is really confusing. And the reason it is confusing because it may have some hidden information or missing information, something like that. So for the short arguments, we are going to analyze by using the diagramming. Okay, and in order to analyze the longer arguments, then we need to summarize the argument. Okay, and you see very soon in the later slides, when we summarize the longer arguments, actually we try to find out what is being missed, and if something is being missed there, we need to add it in, fill in. Okay, now let's start with the diagramming of the short arguments. So as I mentioned earlier, for the short arguments, everything is clear for the content, the meaning already. So we just diagram, we just understand the structure of it. So diagramming is a quick and easy way to analyze some kind of short arguments. Okay, and there are some kind of steps for us to do, to follow. So here you could see the list of the steps with 6 steps to follow. Whatever information you receive, of course, you need to read through or listen carefully. isn't it? So let's say we have an argument to read, and so we need firstly to read through carefully. And then we try to circle or identify whether we have any indicator words or not for the premise or the conclusion. So if we have the indicator for the premise, we know that, okay, that is the premise statement. If we see the indicator for conclusion, we see, all right, that could be the conclusion statement. So that kind of thing helps us to quickly identify the roles of the statements in the arguments. Okay, and after you do that kind of brief reading, then you will try to number the statements. What C first, number first. Okay, what is first, then you number 1 and continue by 2, 3, etc. And when we number like this, somehow we need to be careful because sometimes the arguments have compound statement. Okay, compound statement being linked by linking word like and, but, however, something like that. But actually, for that kind of compound statement, one statement contains more than one meaning information. So we need to break it down into single statement. And again, we only break when it makes sense. Okay, the new statement makes sense, has some meaning, then we break. If when we break, it doesn't make sense, so don't break. Okay, anyway, in the second step, we are going to break if possible, and then we number the statement. And then there is some kind of notification that, don't number any sentence that are not statement. We learned already in the chapter 2 and 3, only statements are allowed. So if it is non-statement, we should not have it in the argument, isn't it? And then somehow, if it doesn't play any role in the arguments, then also we should remove it out of our argument, or in other words, we don't diagram it. So we don't number it. Okay? That is the second step. In the third step, then after you number the statement, then we are going to arrange the number on a diagram in which the number of premise stay above the number of the conclusion. So that is the theory. Very soon. Now you need to kind of try to imagine in your mind, and very soon we will look at the example here. Okay, so number 3, put all the numbers on a diagram in which we allocate the number of premise to be above the number of conclusion. All right. And then the fourth step says that, after you allocate the number of premise above number of conclusion below, then we are going to use the arrow to link the premise with conclusion, because the arrow here means is evidence for. So arrows from premise to conclusion means premise is evidence for conclusion. So if we use the arrow like that, we will try to link the premise number with the conclusion number. And it helps to create a kind of flow chart to show the relations between the premises and its or theirs conclusion. Okay, but before we do step number 4, we need to also be careful, because for some kind of arguments that has more than one premises, okay, it means that that argument, the conclusion is met based on more than one information in the evidence. So in such a case, we need to identify the relations between the premises before we use the arrow. So if the 2 premises or 3 premises from that argument are linked or independent, that create different flowcharts for the whole argument. Okay, the different diagram for the whole argument. So we say that the premises are independent when it has no relation between those, or one of the premise could lead to the conclusion already. So one could lead to one conclusion, the other premise also could lead to that conclusion already, and don't need the link between the 2 premises. In such a case, those premises are called to be independent. If it is the case, then directly you use the arrow to link premise with conclusion, premise with conclusion. However, there could be the case where in the premises they have a link relations. It means that the 2 premises are very much dependent to each other in order to come up with the conclusion. In such a case, before we use the arrow, then we use the plus to link the 2 premises together before we use the arrow to make the link with the conclusion. Okay, so even though there are number 5 steps, but you must consider the 4 after the 5, because it is happen if we have an argument with more than one premise. Okay, and that is number 5. And then in the step number 6, it said that, all right, put the main put the argument's main conclusion at the bottom of the diagram. It means that, okay, if you read through the arguments and you see more than one indicator word for the conclusion, it means that it has two conclusions in the arguments, isn't it? And that should not be the case. If it has two conclusions in the arguments, one must be the main conclusion of the whole argument, and the other one is the sub-conclusion. And so if there is the sub-conclusion, then that sub-conclusion will have some premises for it. And then that sub-conclusion will play the role of the premises for the main conclusion, isn't it? So we put the number of the main conclusion at the bottom. So above the main conclusion will be the premise of the main conclusion. And one of the premise of the main conclusion could be the sub-conclusion, and that sub-conclusion is the conclusion of some upper premise. You see, we have different layers for the diagram. Okay, so those are the 6 steps of the drawing, the diagram, and you will learn and practice this in the exam. But before we do that, you need to remember some kind of tips here. All right, so you can see the very first tips is try to find the main conclusion first. Always, isn't it? We learned why we should find a conclusion already. And here, if the argument has more than one conclusion, then we need to find the main conclusion first. And then we need to pay close attention to the premise and the conclusion indicators. It is very much helpful because if we could find the premise or the conclusion indicators, then it helps us to easily identify the role of the statements, isn't it? And not only the author of the arguments, but also yourself. And when you make the argument to convince the others, you want people to understand your arguments, isn't it? So you have the tendency to use the indicator words. So that is also the same with the other arguers. They will try to use the indicator words for premise and conclusion so that the listener, the audience will follow. Okay, so pay close attention to indicator words, if any. Right, and please remember to treat, all right, to have some kind of treatment for the statement that contain more than one information there. So it means that somehow you face the compound statements, then you need to break the statement into two, especially if you have the linking word and but, however, or something like that. Okay, it means that they also suggest us not to have the compound statement in the argument. And then the fourth one say, oh, you need to treat the conditional statement, if then, or disjunctive statements, either or as single statement, isn't it? If you treat it as the compound statement and you try to break if into one, then into one, it doesn't make sense. And or you break either into one and or into one, also it doesn't make sense. Right? So that is why number 4 say, all right, you need to treat those types of statements as single statements. So it means we shouldn't break. And then number 5 say, oh, don't number or diagram any sentence that is not a statement. And we learned that already. We should not have non-statement in our arguments. But we will consider if it has some kind of important information that it plays the role of either premise or conclusion, then we will consider. We need to rewrite. But in most of the case, the short argument type, we don't have to rewrite anything. They will provide us with some irrelevant and non-statement sentence. In such a case, we should not number them and we should not keep them in our diagram. Okay, remove them or ignore them or even don't number them. And then also number 6 and number 7 suggest us not to number or diagram irrelevant statement or redundant statement. Okay, if the statement plays no role as premise or conclusion in the argument, then we don't diagram it, isn't it? Or even somehow the statements have the information and it conflicts with our argument, especially the conclusion, then we also don't number it and we don't keep it in our diagram. So those are the tips, isn't it? And the tips to suggest you to follow and the steps that you must follow. Okay, so those are very much theory. Now let's get into some kind of examples first. And before we get to the examples, just want to remind you, we have some kind of indicator words for premise and conclusion here. And yeah, they have much more than that, but yeah, there are some kind of common ones that we often use. Okay, so please remember to pay attention to the premise indicators or the conclusion indicators. Now, let's get into the very first example here and apply all of the 6 steps. Okay, together we do. Now, this argument I provide you guys here. First of all, we need to read through. Step number 1 asks us to read through and pay attention to any kind of keywords, indicator words or linking word or something like that. But before we get into that, now, if possible, it's not complex content, isn't it? So if possible, could you please tell me, put in the chat box, how many information can you get from this argument? And you see that this is single statement, isn't it? So far we see one statement only, but how many information can you obtain here? Please put in the chat box. I saw the answers here. Of course, 2 answered. All right, 2 premises and 1 conclusion. I agree. So it means that 2 have or see 3 informations there. In which one is conclusion and then 2 are premises. How about the others? How many information can you see in that argument or in that sentence? All right, Minh An also said 3. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? How many? If you say 3, then very soon we will number, and then there will be 3 numbers there. 1, 2, 3, isn't it? Anyone else want to say anything? Especially if you have, Công Trọng said 2 statements only. So Công Trọng only number 1 and 2. So the diagram will be totally different. How about the others? We have different answers now. Okay, 2 sets. There are 3 informations, 2 premises, 1 conclusion, and 1 say, oh, we have only 2 statements here. Okay. Trọng, if you said 2 statements, what are they?
The first statement is, since Mary visited a realtor and her bank's mortgage department, and 2, the second is, she must be planning on buying a house.
Okay, so Trọng break right here. Okay, and Trọng said that there is 1 premise and 1 conclusion. And I believe you guys all agree that the conclusion is she must be planning on buying a house, isn't it? So now the difference is on the upper part, the previous part. And Trọng read the word since when he read the first statement. But if you break it into 2, then you cannot keep the word since, isn't it? When you rewrite it, you should not keep the since there. That is the mistake that very soon we'll learn, almost at the end of today's class. But anyway, Trọng said 2 information. Mary visited a realtor and her bank mortgage department. And then the second information is the conclusion, which is about she must be planning on buying a house. And for the other girls up above, or for the previous upper answers, then they said 3. 3 means that, they will break. They will break here. Okay, they will break. So we have 2 information in the premise, like Mary visit a realtor, and what? What is the second information if you want to say there are 3 informations? Thu An or Minh An or any others. What could be the second information? You can either put in the chat box or you raise your voice, it's okay. What could be the second information? Mary visit a realtor is 1. Okay. The second. Phương Nhi said her bank mortgage department. Are you sure? Are you sure that is the statement? Her bank mortgage department. Be careful when you rewrite the information. It must be a complete single statement. So her bank mortgage department is not a complete statement, isn't it? What should it be? Mary visit her bank mortgage department. So Ngọc Thảo somehow fixed the statement from Phương Nhi into a complete statement. Okay, so here if we say we have three information, then we break at the linking word and. All right, and Mary, we have the two premises. Mary visit a realtor, and then Mary visit her bank mortgage department. And then conclusion, she must be planning on buying a house. So that is somehow different from Trọng answer. Trọng said, all right, we don't break at the linking word and so we only have one premise. So which one is correct? If you break and it makes sense, then you can break. Why don't you break? If you don't break, you will keep the you will make the content is quite confusing and difficult to analyze, isn't it? So in this case, I suggest Trọng to break the statements of premise into two single ones, like our friend just now mentioned. Okay, first, Mary visit a realtor. Okay, that is separate information from visit her bank mortgage department, isn't it? And then conclusion, all of you agree, she must be planning on buying a house. Am I right? So in such a case, then you guys could name or number the statement like this. And when we read, of course, we see the indicator word since as the premise indicator. So you know that behind the since, there would be the premise. And then conclusion is number 3. So if the question here, well, what is the premise, what is the conclusion, then we know that, all right, 1 and 2 are premises. And we have the notification from the indicator word since. And then conclusion is number 3, isn't it? So now we need to, that is the step number 2. Now step number 3 said that please allocate the numbers of the statements on a board, on a diagram, in which the number of premise stay above the conclusion's number. So 2 and 1 will be above the number 3, which is at the bottom. Okay, but then since in this case we have two premises in the argument, so we need to do step number 5 first. We say that we need to identify whether premises are linked or independent. Link means that both of them is needed in order to come up with the conclusion. Independence means each of them could lead to the conclusion already. But of course, both of them would be better, but at least each of them could lead to the conclusion already. So in this case, we need to identify whether 1 and 2 are linked or independent. Because if it is linked, then we have this diagram, the upper diagram. So you see in both diagrams, the number 3 stay below. So number 3 is the conclusion and 1 and 2 above it. So if the 1 and 2 are linked, then you draw like this. You put the plus to link 1 and 2, and then you use the line and make the arrow to the conclusion. If 1 and 2 are independent, then each of the premise directly you use the arrow to link to the conclusion. So here, in this case, which diagram is correct? Let's say the upper one is number 1 diagram, the below one is number 2 diagram. So please put in the chat box which one is the correct diagram for this argument. 1 or 2. Okay, I see Công Trọng said the first one, Thu Anh said the second, Minh An first, Phương Nhi first, Minh Trang first, Hồng Nhung second, Hải Yến first, Phương Vi first. So you see that we have 2 answers here, and most of you said the first one is correct, and there's some of you said the second one is correct. Okay. Let's see, there are still answers from your friends. Okay, now what could be the correct answers? Again, I mentioned, of course, both of them would be better, but if in the meaning, in the content, each of them could lead to the conclusion, then you still can treat them as independent. Okay, there would be some examples where soon you see clearly that both or all of the arguments are needed to come up with the conclusion. So here in this case, okay, let's look at the diagram again. Here in this case, Mary visit a realtor. Realtor is something related to house, isn't it? And then bank mortgage department also something related to the house. So to be correct, then of course both of them are needed in order to come up with a conclusion. But in this case, by looking at the meaning, each of them could lead to the conclusion already. Of course, the level of the strength for the argument would be less with both of them together. Okay? But in this case, we see that, right, the second one is more correct in case of the relation between 1 and 2. So in such a case, then the second one where you have the direct arrow from 1 to 3 and then 2 to 3 would be more precise for the diagram. Okay, and again, of course, both of them will be better, but each of them still can stand alone in coming up with a conclusion. Okay, and so very soon you will see that there are another examples where we have the arguments in which the conclusions is needed by both of the, or all of the premises to be linked together. Okay, now how about this one? Read through. Okay, let's do together. Read through, and here we could see that we have two statements, but how many information can we have? Yeah, Thuan said 3, isn't it? How about the others? Okay, Ngọc Thảo, so 3, Đức Hạnh also said 3. Yeah, you can see that we have two statements, but we can have 3 information there. The first information, which is our conclusion, isn't it? Sandra can't register for her classes on Wednesday. After all, so we have the indicator word after all. After all, Sandra is a sophomore, and sophomore registrations begin on Thursday. So we see the linking word "and" here, and we try to break out. When we break it here, it still makes sense. So actually, like you guys said, we have 3 information, so we can break it into 3 statements. So that is the second step we do. We break and we number. Okay, so what's the first number? First, 1, 2, 3. Now we need to draw. Okay, we need to draw. So in this case, could you please tell me that, all right, what is the correct diagram? If you want, you can put in the chat box, okay? What is the correct diagram for this argument? I will get the bonus for the first 5 correct answers. The diagram, please. No, I need you guys to draw the diagram. If you write 1, 2, I don't know what you're saying. Draw the diagram. I'm taking bonus for the previous answer. Okay, yeah, Thuan said 2 plus 3 and arrows to 1. How about the others? Do you have the same diagram with Thuan, or you have different? Yeah, my wing also said yes, she has the same diagram with Thuan, and it also agreed that the first one is the conclusion, isn't it? And here, clearly, when you read in detail for the content, you say that, right, we cannot have 1 lead to 3, 3 lead to 1 immediately, or 2 lead to 3 to 1 immediately. It means that we need 3 and 2 together in order to come up with number 1 as the conclusion, isn't it? So clearly, in this case, number 2 and number 3, the 2 premises are very much linked. Without 1, the other could not lead to the conclusion, isn't it? Now, if you look back to the previous example, you will see that at least in the previous example, each of the premise could lead to the conclusion. That is the difference, isn't it? And you see that when we draw, yeah, first we could see that, right? After all is the indicator word, the and is the linking word. Okay, so we break it and we draw. So whether you say the 2 premises are independent, then this is the diagram, or it is linked, then this is the diagram. And this is the diagram that Tuan showed us. And all of you, or even most of you, say, yeah, agree with the diagram from Tuan, isn't it? And yes, that is the correct answers. Here, 2 and 3 are very much linked before coming up with the conclusion 1. Get it? That is the meaning of the diagramming short arguments. Now, how about this one? Let's practice and try to get bonus for yourself. Okay, put the drawing, your diagram in the chat box to get the bonus. Not difficult, isn't it? Where is your answer? Okay, I saw the answer from Bích Huệ. Very nice drawing, very big arrows. And 1, little 2, little 3. Khánh Huyền in the chat box also try to type with the arrow 1 to 2 to 3. Very good. Tuan also 1 to 2 to 3. And My Wing got different answers. My Wing put 1, 2 separately and lead to 3, meaning that My Wing say 1 and 2 are linked, are independent and lead to 3. Hồng Nhung 1 lead to 2, lead to 3. Công Trọng is the same answers with My Wing. Mỹ Hương also same answers with Công Trọng and and My Wing. Okay, so we have 2 different answers here. That is good. It means that only one group of the class will get the bonus. Okay, now let's look at least all of the answers here. We could see that number 3, you guys put it at the bottom. It means that all of you agree that the conclusion is number 3, isn't it? And then now we need to look at the original argument to identify the other rows of the 1 and 2. So we could see that if we read through the arguments, we see the very first indicator word, so. That is the indicator for conclusion. And then go next, and then another so. So that is another indicator word for conclusion, meaning that this argument has 2 conclusions. How come? Oh, it must be one main conclusion and one sub-conclusion, right? So if I put the 3 at the bottom, it means all of you agree that 3 is the main conclusion. So then we draw by asking the question, if 3 is the conclusion, then what are the premises of 3, isn't it? So we see that 3 is actually the result of 2, right? And wonder what if it is also the result of 1 or not. Like Trọng, My Wing, and one more friend draw, or it is not. 3 is not from 1. And you could see that number 2 is actually a conclusion, and it plays the role of sub-conclusion. So if 2 is the conclusion, then there must be a premise for 2, isn't it? So if 1 is premise for 3, then that is not possible because we need 2 to have the premise as well. So in this case, to be correct, this must be the diagram. 1 lead to 2 and lead to 3, isn't it? If Trọng, Mỹ Hương, and My Wing draw the diagram like that, then what could be the premise of 2? 2 is conclusion, but in your drawing, we don't see the premise of 2, isn't it? So now the 2 groups of answers, only one group that got the bonus, okay? So I will take notes the bonus for the one who got the correct answers after I show you the next question. So work on that while I take note for the other friends. Bùi Bích Huệ, Trần Thị Khánh Huyền, Trần Thu Anh, Nguyễn Hồng Nhung. Right. Okay. So again, in this case, I already number the statements for you guys. So I do step number 1 and step number 2 for you guys already. You only do the last few steps to draw or to come up with the diagram. Okay, I got the first answer from Nguyễn Xuân Sơn. 1 plus 2 leads to 3, 3 plus 5 leads to 4, and that is also the same answer with Bùi Bích Huệ. Let's see if other friends okay, Trần Gia Huy typed like that, and I think also have the same meaning, yeah. 1 plus 2 leads to 3, and 3 plus 5 leads to 4. Very good. Khánh Huyền also the same diagram. Khánh Huyền, next time maybe you should put number 4 to be something in between of 3 and 5. Okay, if you put like that, it's really difficult to see. Please draw like Bích Huệ and Xuân Sơn, something like that. And Trúc Na also got the same drawing. Thu Anh also got the same drawing, and Minh Tín also got the same drawing. Hồng Ân also. Xuân Lan also. Oh, then we have the difference in the Hồng Nhung answers. In Hồng Nhung answers, also we have 1 and 2 at the same level, 3 and 5 at the same level, and 4 at the bottom. But Hồng Nhung said that 1 and 2 are independent, 3 and 5 are independent. Okay, and Công Trọng got the same diagram with other friends. Mỹ Hương also got the same diagram, and Minh Tú got the same diagram with Hồng Nhung. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Again, there would be a group who got bonus. Wait. Minh Tú, I saw the plus and the arrow. What does it mean? You have the plus and then the arrow also. Whether the premises are linked or independent. Yeah, you cannot do both like that, isn't it? So actually we have 3 types of diagram. Anyway, so only one must be correct, isn't it? So now let's get back to my slides here. We'll see that, yeah, we all agree that number 4 is our main conclusion, and number 3 is the sub-conclusion. Because in front of number 3 and number 4, we have indicator words for the conclusion. Yeah, and number 4 is the conclusion, which is the main conclusion, because we check in detail for the meaning, the content. And also we see the because in front of number 5, so 5 must be the premise for 4. And then if we check the meaning in detail, then 3 is also the premise for 4. So that's why 3 and 5 are in the same level. All right, 4 at the bottom, upper it is 3 and 5. Yeah, and upper the 3 is 1 and 2, because 3 is the conclusion and the premises for 3 is 1, 2, isn't it? Now that is the allocation of numbers on the diagram. Now we need to use the arrow to link the premise with conclusion, but before that we need to identify whether the premises are linked or independent, especially between 1 and 2, 3 and 5, isn't it? Now the difference would be here if you say that 1 and 2 are independent or linked, and similar for 3 and 4, whether they are linked or independent, then you will have different diagram. But here, when you look at the detail, let's say look at the premise 1 and 2 and come up with the conclusion 3, we'll see that, all right, 1 say about most Democrats are liberals. And then 2 provide additional information. Senator X is a Democrat. And my conclusion starts, Senator X is probably a liberal. So it's very much linked between 1 and 2, isn't it? And similar, there would be, if you read in detail, then there would be very link between 3 and 5. So this must be the correct diagram. isn't it? So for those who got the wrong diagram or different diagram from this one or most of our friends here, please check again. Okay, 1 and 2 are linked, very much linked, and similar 3 and 5 are very much linked in order to come up with the conclusion 4. All right, so I will take notes while you work on this one, and don't be scared. This is not difficult at all. It's long, but it's not a long argument. So for the previous questions, I will give the bonus for the first 5 correct answers. Start from Nguyễn Xuân Sơn and Bùi Bích Huệ, Trần Gia Huy, Khánh Huyền, and last is Trúc Na. I'm sorry for the others. Next time be faster, okay? Be patient and read. It looks like it's long, but it's not long. Okay, we got the answers from Nguyễn Hồng Nhung, followed by Thu Anh. All right, let me see. Both of them have the same diagram, and also Bích Huệ also got the same diagram. Trúc Na also got the same diagram. Công Trọng get different diagram. Công Trọng said 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8 are linked. Okay, and Hồng Ân also got the same diagram with other friends, but not Công Trọng. Xuân Lan also the same. Okay, Minh Tú, all right, a little bit different, but also the same to be true. And Minh Tín is same with Công Trọng, saying that the premises are linked in order to come up with number 1. Công Sáng, I'm sorry, the same. Phương Vi, the same. Okay, at least we have 2 groups of answers, but at least all of you agree that we have 8 statements, isn't it? And the first one is the conclusion, the main conclusion. And there are some sub-conclusions for 2 and 4. Sorry, someone is saying something. It's very small voice. Hello? Please turn off the microphone if you don't want to say something to the class. Okay, so let's check the answers. Now here we can see that, yeah, it's very long, but the good news is I read numbers for you. All right, so we have 8 statements here, and all of you agree that the first statement is the main conclusion. So cheating is wrong for several reasons. Okay, first, because; second, because; third, fourth, and finally. So here we could see that whether the 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8 are linked or independent, it is very much depending on how you judge their relations in order to come up with the conclusion. So here, can we say that we do all of this to be called a cheater, or we do one of it, it is called a cheater already? Which one? We do all of this to be a cheater, or we just do one of it? One of the 2, 4, 6, 7, and 8, or 8, then we are called cheater. Which one is more correct? If you want to say that we do all of this to be a cheater, then all of the premises must be linked, like Trọng and Minh Tín in their diagram. But if you say the diagram should be some kind of independent premises, then yeah, just one of it. Just do one of it, then you become a cheater already. So in this case, just one is a cheater, isn't it? It doesn't need to be all of that. You done, then you will say you are a cheater, or you will be called a cheater. Ngọc Thảo agree that all of it to be a cheater. Really? Now we have different opinion here. I need to have more answers. Which one? Do all to be a cheater, or just one is a cheater? Công Trọng changed the answer. Công Trọng said now he changed and he said that just one of it, it is a cheater already. So you see, you could see that when you read in detail, the way to identify whether premises are linked or independent is how well it leads to the conclusion. Of course, all of that would be very worse, isn't it? You're a big cheater if you do all of it, but at least one of that, you are called a cheater already. Right? So in this case, I like it because you guys all have the structure, the allocations of the numbers, very good. But the problem is the mistake will happen if you don't really see whether this kind of premises should be linked or independent. So again, each of them could be called a cheater already. So the correct diagram must be this one. Isn't it? So thanks, Công Trọng. Finally, he after I look back and after checking again, then he changed the answer. But anyway, this is the correct diagram. Now I will take note the banners while you are working on this one. And here from now on, I don't number for you. You have to number by yourself. Okay. So let me take note. Nguyễn Hồng Nhung, Trần Thu Anh. Thu Anh got many bonus today. Good. Bích Huệ, Trúc Lê. And the last one should be for Nguyễn Phương Hồng Ân. Hồng Ân, Hồng An, Hồng Ân đấy.
Hồng An cô.
Hồng An, sorry. I'm looking back to your previous bonus to see. Okay, Hồng An, sorry. Okay. And I'm sorry for the other friends. I could not give the bonus because you are later than them, but try next time, okay? Right. So this one takes longer time, isn't it? Because you have to read by yourself, number by yourself, and somehow you need to break by yourself if possible. What took you guys so long? Is it difficult? And yeah, for this kind of exercise, you need a reading skills at first, isn't it? All right, the answers is shown here. Trúc Quỳnh number and then number the statements. Very good, and then put it into the diagram. But Huệ also had the same diagram, and also she typed again. Very good, with the dot in between to save time. And also Sung Lang got the same drawing and the numbers like that, so I believe there would be the same number of statements like the other friends. Hồng Nhung also got the same drawing. Let's see if we have different answers or not. So far we received 4 answers and all of the drawings are the same. Let's see. Any other submissions? Okay, if not, then let's look at this. Oh, wow, one more. Khánh Huyền. Khánh Huyền got different diagram. Khánh Huyền said the 3, 4, 5, and 6 are linked, and then little 2, little 1. Thu An also same with the other friends, but not Khánh Huyền. Okay, so we have 6 and right, some more. My Wing also same with the other friends. So we have 7 answers. 6 answers are the same, and 1 answer is different from the other. Okay, now all of the answers agree that the last one, to be the bottom one, is number 1, in which 1 is the main conclusion and 2 is the sub-conclusion. So 2 has many premises there, and also 2 is the premise of 1. Okay, and 3, 4, 5, 6 are the premises of 2. Now the difference will happen when you identify whether the 3, 4, 5, 6 are linked or independent. Okay, so now let's look at my slide here. Yeah, it'll agree that we have 6 statements here. There's nothing in between for us to break for the linking word. And we have the why not here. It doesn't make sense. It's just a question, so we don't have to number it, isn't it? So 1 is the main conclusion, 2 is sub-conclusion, and the other premises support the 2. Why not? Because this, because that, because. So we could check in carefully to see whether the premises 3, 4, 5, 6 are linked or independent to lead to 2. And after we check the detail, the correct diagram will be, yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6 are actually linked. It means that each of them could lead to the conclusion 2. Of course, all of them would be better. That's why they list all of them. But we don't need a link relation for each of them, isn't it? So that is the correct diagram for this example. And for one of our friends, the answer is link. Please check again. Okay, they are independent. Now I will take the bonus for the first 5 correct answers when you are solving this question. So the first one is from Trúc Quỳnh. Second, Bích Huệ, Xuân Lan, Hồng Nhung, and Thu Anh. Oh, my wing next time faster. Okay, I got the first answer from Kom Shang, Kom Shang or Kom Shang, sorry. Is it your first time answering? Because I don't see the bonus in the previous class. Anyway, sorry if I call your name wrongly. Kom Shang, yeah. 1, 2, 3 plus 4 arrow 5. And then the same answers from Sung Lang, Công Trọng, also the same. The first three answers and all of the diagram are the same, so hopefully it is correct. Let's see if we have other answers or not. Trúc Na, also the same. Let's see. That's all? No one else? Okay, so we have 4 answers and all of them are the same. So hopefully they got the correct answers, okay? So yeah, let's first of all look at the slides here. You can see that we have 5 statements, and that is the same with the numbers of statements from our friend's answer here, isn't it? And then, all right, how about the diagram? So we see that we have for this reason, lack of third, so 1 is premise of 2, 2 is premise of 3. And then if so means that they want to support number 3 with something else in order to come up with the conclusion number 5. Therefore, we have 3 and 4 are very much linked in order to come up with number 5 conclusion. Very good. So all of the answers, 4 answers here are all correct. Okay. Ihu, I'm sorry, your answer is very late, so sorry I could not count it. Maybe due to the internet or something wrong. Next time, make it faster, okay? Right, how about this one? Again, read carefully, okay? Read carefully. Okay, due to the internet, just now I saw the answers from Minh Tú, Công Sang or Công Sang again, Sang or Sang. Could you please confirm your name? And Xuân Sơn, Phương Vi, Xuân Lan. Okay, we have some answers are the same except for Minh Tú. Okay, Minh Tín also got the same answers like the other friends. Okay, Now I will close the answer at Minh Tín. Right. Now let's look at the diagram, the slides here. We see that we have totally 5 statements. There's no place that we break the statements into single one, isn't it? So we have 5 and let's see, all of you agree that number 5 is the main conclusion, isn't it? So the upper of it would be 3, 4, and then 1, 2. Yeah. And then we have the therefore before number 3. It means number 3 is the sub-conclusion. And of course, the premise of 3 will be 1 and 2. Yeah. So let's see, the correct diagram will be, yeah, like this. So 1 and 2 are linked, lead to 3, and 3 and 4 are linked, lead to 5. That is the correct answer. So among the answers, Minh Tú need to check again. Okay, the statements of premises are linked, not independent. All right. That I think that is all for the first part of the diagramming. Do you have any questions for the diagramming? Let me take note, Tabanas. Any questions for the diagramming part? Yes or no? Why so quiet? Is there any questions for the part of diagramming, the short argument? Can you guys hear me? I'm afraid my internet is not good. No questions. Oh, okay, good. At least you guys listening to me. All right. So yeah, only Trọng and Giang Huy responds to me, but at least I hope you guys understand what we learned so far. Especially, it's quite difficult to say whether premise is linked or independent to the other ones or not. Okay, because it affects the diagram. So if you don't have any question at this moment, then let's take 5-minute break. Okay, we go before we go to the next part of the longer argument. Is it okay? So now it's 2:28 from my side. Let's see each other again after 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, time flies. Sorry to say that 5 minutes passed. So can we go back? Are you back from the break?
Yes, teacher.
Not very excited. Sal is like, yes, teacher, I'm sleepy. Okay, right, thanks. So let's continue the second part with the summarizing of the longer arguments. And to be honest, for the dealing with the longer arguments would be more difficult. Okay, if you think that diagramming the short arguments is difficult, then the longer arguments will be more difficult. So first of all, the goal of summarizing the longer arguments is to provide some kind of brief information or summary of the arguments. And of course, when we do summarizing like that, we need to make sure that the the information that we did for that argument must be accurate from what the original has. And also it is clearly, okay, restate all of the main points of the original arguments by your own language, okay, by your own vocabulary, all right? And in order to do the summarizing of the long arguments, you need to have two skills to be practiced. The first one is the paraphrasing skill, and the second one is the skills in finding missing information. And we are dealing with the argument, so the missing information could be the premise or the conclusion. Okay, so for the first skill about paraphrasing, we need to understand what does it mean by paraphrase. Of course, paraphrase means a detailed restatement of a passage using different words or vocabulary or phrase or your own vocabulary, something like that. Okay, and then when we do the paraphrase, it means we restate the information. So somehow you need to ensure that you meet all of the critical thinking standards when you restate. Okay, the accuracy, the clarity, the concision, or the charity, the principle of charity. Okay, and we know that is important because when we convert information into our own language or our own vocabulary, we need to make sure that we keep the original meaning. All right, and actually when we restate, if something unclear from the original argument, then we need to make it clearer, so we make it better arguments. All right, so the first standard, the accuracy that the paraphrasing must ensure or maintain is that, all right, if the information originally like this, when you restate it, you may have different ways of restating, but you need to make sure that the restatement is accurate from the original or argument or statement or information. Okay, so let's say we have different informations, but let's pick up this one as the example. And you can see that, let's say if we have two ways of restate or paraphrase like this. The first one, Europe virtual interests are totally different than ours. And then the other one, the second one, say Europe has a set of virtual interests that are of little or no concern to us. So among the two, then the second one is better, isn't it? Better means more accurate to the original ones. Rather than the first one, it was a totally different, then somehow it is different from the original meaning, isn't it? So we may have, okay, this is kind of the skills, but it might have different way of writing from each of you, but then anyway, you need to ensure that the accuracy is there. Okay, for the first one. And the second one is clear. Clear means, yeah, that is very obvious that clarity is the gateway standard, isn't it? We learned already. So when we restate the information, if the original information is unclear, when we restate it, we need to make it clear to the audience, to the listener, or to the reader, isn't it? So let's look at this example. You will see that I highlight something in red and also in blue. It means that it's kind of something confusing and not easy for all of people to understand in common, isn't it? So if you write something you want to say to many people in general, but then you write or you set it to academic, all right, not many people could understand, then how can you convince them, isn't it? So if you Google, then you will see there are some kind of similar meaning, but the word would be more easy to understand or more common. So we could see that, right, whatever in the red is just the meaning as the back of your head, and also the whatever in the blue is the scrap on your left knee. So if it is the case, why don't you write like this? That will be easier for us to understand. If you say in an academic conference or something like that on this expertise, then it's okay. But if you want to say in general, then this would be the better one. The second one, the paraphrase, would be clearer for the audience, isn't it? So that is the second standard, the clarity. And the third one is concise. It means that, right, if we say, if the information, whatever we try to say, to write is clear already, then we make it shorter, okay, with less word, because we want to save the time, the words, the vocabulary, etc. Okay, so in this example, we could see that I highlight the owning to the fact that, because I see that, oh, that is something that we can shorten down, isn't it? So in the meaning, what does it mean by owning to the fact that? Owning to the fact that means what? Anyone? Because, yeah, like Han said, because. So in short, why don't you just say because? Yeah, Hai Ying also, Nguyễn Hoàng Hải Ying said because. So in this case, only to the fact that is the because. So it is the same, obviously the same meaning. So here the concise say, all right, if the information is clear and easy to understand already, so we should shorten the words that we should write or say. Okay, to save time or other reasons. So in this case, only to the fact that means because, so you can change it into because. And the other places, some are also, you can shorten it down. So originally you have 23 words, and then when you write like this, you can have 13 words. So you say nearly half of the statements, isn't it? So concise is when you have the information which is clear already, then you can shorten it down, okay? For the other cases, in the later one, you will see that we may have to apply the principle of charity. And in this example, you will see it is somehow conflict with the previous one about concise. But the reason is that the principle of charity is applied when things are unclear. Things here means the meaning. Okay, the information is unclear. So originally in this argument, they said that cigarette smoking causes lung cancer. Right, therefore that you shouldn't do it. So you shouldn't keep smoking. If you do, then you will be endangered. Okay, so in the premise they say cigarette smoking causes lung cancers. That is not always true, isn't it? So in such a case, if you write like this, it seems like cigarette smoking is the cause of lung cancer. But that is not true, because there are still many people who smoke but their lung is fine. Or there are still many people who have never smoked, but they got lung cancer problems. So this is not always true for the statement here. So in such a case, the information is unclear, so we need to apply the principle of charity. If you remember, the principle of charity asks us to be generous, okay? Generous to the topic, the opinion, or generous to the arguers themselves or herself, himself, isn't it? So in this case, we need to restate, or we need to paraphrase it. And when you paraphrase it, you will see that the new statement somehow longer with more words than the original one. And that is somehow conflict with the previous about the concise, isn't it? So here, the reason why we make it longer, because we make sure that the content is clear, is true, isn't it? So cigarette smoking is a positive cultural factors that greatly increase the risk of getting lung cancer. And if we say so, although it's make it very long, but at least we make sure that we don't make the mistake in the original one about cigarette smoking causes lung cancer. Got it? Sorry, I heard some sound from someone. Could you please turn off the microphone from your side? Thanks. Okay. Now that is the standard, and the principle of charity is the last standard to be make sure when the situation is unclear. When this is clear, we don't apply the principle of charity, remember? So that what we saw in the previous slides were for the paraphrasing skill. And then now is the other skill that we need in summarizing the longer arguments, which is to find the missing part in the arguments. The missing part could be the premise or the conclusion. Okay, sometimes people say or write so many things, and sometimes they miss something. And when you read it or when you listen to it carefully, if you could feel like oh, something is being missed. What you said so many things, but finally, what is the point? If you say what is the point, it means they missed the conclusion. Or if you say, all right, I got your point, but I don't think that is enough to support your conclusion there. So it means that you identify the missing part is the the premise, isn't it? So that is also a skill that you need to practice. Now, let's look at this slide to see that, right, because the finding missing part is not the strange things. It is very common. So even people have the name for it. All right, they put the name for this kind of mistake, and there are some kind of rules for us to apply in order to improve the skills of finding missing part. In order to find the missing part in the arguments, you need to faithfully interpret the arguer's intentions. Okay, you need to understand what the arguer is trying to say, what is there, or his or her intention. Okay, and again, be charitable. So again, the mistakes is there, and we are going to fix the mistakes. So we need to apply the principle of charity. Be generous in interpreting other people's intentions or incomplete statements by adding your own one. Okay, and when we add like this, you must follow whatever they say previously. You cannot add something which is somehow conflict with what the arguer is providing. Okay, so there are two rules like that we need to apply. The first rule is the faithfully interpret the arguer's intention. So in order to do so, we need to ask the question, what else does the arguer must assume? So we pretend that, okay, we assume that we are the author. So, well, is that all that the person says, or is there anything that missing here? What are they trying to assume? So something like that to reach the conclusion. So if we have this kind of question, it's actually we are very doubt that they missed some kind of premise, isn't it? And in such a case, then we have the tendency to assume something, and we fill in the missing premise for the arguer. Okay, and whatever you assume or you add in must be somehow consistent with whatever being provided in the original arguments already. And don't add something that somehow is irrelevant or is conflict or contradict with the original information that they provide. You are having the tendency to make the argument better, not to become worse. Okay. And then be charitable. I told you guys already the principle of charity being applied when things are unclear. So here we apply the principle of charity, or we will be charitable because this is very helpful for us to understand some kind of intention or to interpret the intentions of the arguer. And also we will try be charitable, then we will try to make the arguments as good as it could be. Okay. Now, when we do the summarizing of the longer arguments, there is another term, we call it standardizing. So by today, at least you see that you deal with some kind of verb like summarizing, standardizing in this slide, or diagramming, yeah, analyzing. Okay, so this kind of verb will teach us what does it mean by this, by that. So you need to at least remember the definitions of those terms. Okay, so in analyzing the longer arguments, we use the method of standardizing. And here is the definitions of standardizing. Standardizing consists of restating an argument in standard logical form, right? And there are steps to do so. And later on, you will see the steps are very much similar with the step of diagramming. Okay, in which, yeah, you have to number the statements, you need to put the premise to be above the conclusions, and the difference will be in adding the justification here. Okay, very soon I will explain that there are some steps which similar to the diagramming, but there are still steps that is different from the diagramming. Okay, now let's go with the steps in the standardizing here. So the standardizing involves 5 steps, as you can see, and it is very much the same with the diagramming. In the first step, when you receive an argument, for sure you have to read through carefully. Okay, and when you read through like that, you will try to identify the main conclusion, the sub-conclusion, or the premises, or something like that. It means that when you read through like that, you identify the role of the statement. Okay. And then the second step say or suggest you guys to omit any unnecessary or irrelevant materials. And we see that, right? Sometimes we say so many things, sometimes it is irrelevant information we added in our arguments or some unnecessary information. So in such a case, when you analyze the longer arguments like this, you need to remove or omit this kind of irrelevant or unnecessary information. Okay? And then the number 3 said somehow similar with the step in the diagramming, we need to number the statements one by one. Okay, and in the correct logical order, what see first, number first. And then when you put your argument into the single statement form, we put the premise, and then conclusion. Okay, the conclusion stay below. That is somehow similar with the step number 3 in the diagramming. Then the difference will be in the step number 4 and number 5 here. So number 4 said that we need to fill in any key missing premises and conclusion. It means that, like I said previously, when you read or listen to the argument, somehow you feel like, oh, something wrong. I don't get your point. If you don't get the point, then the conclusion is missing. Or I think you missed something. It's not enough to come up with that conclusion. So it means that you doubt that they missed the premise. So in such a case, we identify what is being missed and we need to fill in. So like I said previously, for the diagramming, whatever they provide us, we just draw the diagram. And here we need to fill in the missing part. That is why it is more difficult, isn't it? But filling something, it very much depending on your skills. And each of you has different skills. Yeah. And then the last step, as mentioned earlier, is about the justification. And so in the standardizing, we don't draw the diagram. In previous exercise, in that drawing the diagram, we see that after we draw the diagram, we see clearly, okay, how many statements they have, where is premise, where are premises, where is conclusion, or is there any sub-conclusion, something like that. But here, in the standardizing, we don't draw. Okay, and then we just add the justification to each of the conclusion, meaning that when we add the justification to each of the conclusion, we read it and we know, okay, this conclusion is from what premises. Okay, so that we don't have to draw. So what does it mean by justification? Yeah, very soon I will show you. But at least you need to remember, for the standardizing, we have 5 steps and some of them are very much similar with the diagramming. Okay. Now, let's look at this example to see. Before we discuss, please think for yourself and tell me if you see what is being missed in this argument or not. What is being missed? It's not long argument, isn't it? It seems like it's not long, but actually it's confusing. So that is why it's long. So a main conclusion, Huệ said the main conclusion is missing. How about the others? Do you agree with Huệ? Yeah. So I want Huệ to keep thinking. If you think that the main conclusion is being missed, so think in your mind, okay, or prepare the answer. What could be the main conclusion? Right. Công Trọng also agree that the main conclusion is being missed. Okay, yeah, that is your answer. So if you think that the main conclusion is being missed, then please prepare the missing part that you will fill in very soon. Now let's look at the example here and we analyze together. Okay, we have actually 3 statements here. The first statement is okay, it's quite clear, nothing to fix. Yeah. We can see something only after it has happened. And the second statement is still okay. Future events, however, have not yet happened. And then the third one is actually caused the problem, isn't it? Read carefully. So, seeing a future event seems to imply both that it has and has not happened, and that's logically impossible. So we have actually two informations here, and we can break it right here with the linking word and, isn't it? So seeing a future event seems to imply both it has and has not happened in one part, and that's logically impossible in another part. But when you break the statement like this, you need to make clear what does it mean by the word that here, isn't it? So now, what does it mean that here? In the second half of the third statement, what does it mean that? And Tan Trung said the missing part is the sub-conclusion. Anyway, now let's continue with my current questions. What does it mean that in this statement? Right here. Tuan said seeing a future event is the that in that missing part, in that confusing part. Anyone else? What does it mean that in the second half of the statement 3? Tuan said seeing a future event. Okay. Oh wait, Công Trọng. I'm not asking for the missing part. I'm asking what does it mean that in the second half of the third statement. Yeah, any answers? Only one answers from Tuan about that. The other friends, how about you? And Công Trọng said the missing part is logically. What is logically? All right. So Công Trọng now said a future event is the that. And Bùi Bích Huệ said that is an event but to have happened and not to have happened. Wow. You see, this is something different from your answers. Tuan and Công Trọng said that is seeing a future event or it's a future event. And Bích Huệ had different answer. Bích Huệ said that means an event but to have happened and not to have happened. Okay, now keep that answers in mind and or in the chat box. And then now please tell me what is the missing conclusion, like you guys said. Bùi Bích Huệ said a main conclusion is being missed, and Công Trọng also said so. So now, what is the missing conclusion that you want to add, Bích Huệ or Công Trọng? Công Trọng said that logically impossible to have a future event. It is logically, yeah. How about Bích Huệ? What is your missing conclusion? What should it be? I think Bích Huệ is typing, right? What is the missing conclusion? So the idea is same as Công Trọng. So it means that it is logically impossible to see a future event. And then Công Trọng answers for the that and the missing conclusion somehow conflict. If Công Trọng said that missing the that is a future event, isn't it? Then actually it is being mentioned. Then it is not being missed, isn't it? So if Công Trọng said the missing conclusion is it's logically just impossible to see a future event, and you fill it in, but then you say that what that means of seeing a future event, then it's not missed there, isn't it? So there must be something different. If the missing information is it is impossible to see a future event, then the word that here is not seeing a future event. It must be something different. And that here means an event both to have happened and not to have happened. That is the answers from Bích Huệ. Okay, now let's look together. I practice it in, yeah, I agree that the main conclusion is being missed, not the sub-conclusion, who just mentioned that. Thành Trung is not the sub-conclusion. The main conclusion is being missed. Okay, finally, I don't know what they are trying to say, so the main conclusion is being missed. But I understand Thành Trung said the sub-conclusion is being missed because Trung also have the idea that the word that here means seeing a future event, isn't it? But to be true, the that here doesn't mean that. It means that an event both to has happened and has not happened. So again, practice together. As I mentioned earlier, number 1 has no problem. Number 2 also is okay, isn't it? The problem here is number 3 with the compound statements of 2 informations. The first half of the information is okay. The first information is okay. And please notice, the form 1, 2 here is called the justification. And you see that we add the justification to each of the conclusion. And by reading the justification here, we see that, all right, this conclusion number 3 is made based on premise 1, 2. You see, from 1, 2. So this is the justification that when you do the standardizing, you need to add to each of the conclusion. And by reading this, we know this conclusion is from which premise or which premises. Okay, now that is the first half of the third statement. The second half of the statement has that's logically impossible, and that is confusing, isn't it? So now I ask you guys, what does it mean by that? And some of you said that means seeing a future event. Okay, and the others say that means an event but to has happened and not to have happened. That is logically impossible to have an event that has happened and has not happened, isn't it? So which one is more correct? The correct one must be, yeah, the one that Bích Huệ answered. Why? Because if you say that, oh, that is seeing a future event, then if it is meaning like the seeing a future event, then the conclusion, the main conclusion is here already. It's not being missed, isn't it? And that, then we would say, okay, the sub-conclusion is being missed, like Thành Trung said. But here, to be correct, the word that is for an event both to have happened and not to have happened. And the fourth one, the first statement here, I didn't add it. I just explained the term that into the red letters here, the red words here. And I don't add it, it is there. Okay, what I add, what I fill in is the main conclusion. And here again, it is the conclusion, so we have the justification for it. From 3, 4. Then we make conclusion in the statement number 5, which we add in, we fill in. It is logically impossible to see a future event. Got it? That is how we do. And it's not easy at all. You need to read through, you see if it is okay for this statement, it's not okay for the other statement. And if it has some mistakes, some confusions, you need to make it clear. And then you need to find out if it has something missing or not. It's not easy, isn't it? Okay, so in summaries, we need to do some kind of steps, of course, for the standardizing. And there are some kind of mistakes you may face. Okay, especially when you do the group work, you conduct the arguments. In most of the case, you will borrow the information from some source. You copy and paste from the internet, let's say. And you need to avoid the plagiarium check, okay, for example. And then you need to restate or rewrite the information. And somehow when you rewrite the information, you may make this kind of mistakes. So we will get into the mistakes one by one to understand it and to fix it. Okay, the very first mistake is you write an incomplete statement. And that is not good, isn't it? When you write an argument, it must be a single complete statement. So if it is incomplete, it is the mistake that we should avoid or we should fix. So here in this case, we have an argument with 2 statements right there. And there is something wrong with the first statement, isn't it? and then just say because and then stop, and it makes the statement become incomplete one. So how can we fix this mistake? How can we fix the mistake in the first statement? Any ideas? It's not that difficult, isn't it? Sung Lang said animals can experience pain and suffering. So if we look back to the original statement, we will see that Sung Lang just removed the word because, delete the word because, isn't it? That's all. Very simple. She deleted the word because. Okay, and that all. And we got the complete single statement there. And some people are thinking too much. The reason is that, they saw the because, so they need to add something to make the complete statement. But you know already, right? To build up something is much more tough work or difficult than to destroy or remove something. So like Sung Lan did, why don't you guys just remove the word because? Then that is all. That's done. And yeah, that's why Công Trọng was trying. What Công Trọng? You cannot start a statement with because at all. And then you make the conclusion first. You don't have to combine it into one. We break it into two. Why you combine it into one? Don't do that. Okay. But anyway, I'm trying to say that there's nothing wrong with the conclusion. The mistake is in the premise, and the mistake is incomplete statement. And so I asked how to fix it, and Sung Lang suggests the way. Very simple. Remove the word because. That's done. Very easy. If you think of filling to more, add more information into the because to make a complete statement, it takes more effort, isn't it? Why don't just remove the because? That's it, right? And you make this mistake quite often because you borrow the information, you copy and paste from the internet, and sometimes when you paste into your document, and it has this kind of mistake. So check carefully and fix it. So yeah, fix like this. Remove the because and done. Okay. How about the second mistake here? You have the mistake of include more than one statement per line. It means that we have a compound statement or a statement that has more than one information. Yeah, we did it before, right? So here in this case, we also have something like that. And what should we do? We need to break it down, isn't it? We break it down, and when we break it, we be careful. We put the conclusion below the premise. So where should we break? Read through and we see since is here, isn't it? So we break at the since here, and since is the indicator word for premise. So behind the since, what after the since is the premise. Before that is the conclusion. And when you rewrite, okay, how are you going to rewrite the premise? You cannot keep it like he no longer enjoy, isn't it? You cannot start with he. They will ask, who is he? So you need to say, the presidents no longer enjoy the confidence of the board of trustees, so something. Okay, so that is how we fix, we rewrite and we make it a better statement. Understand? So again, the mistake, that would be the mistake if you add or you write a compound statement or one statement with more than one information there. Okay. We should avoid it. If you have it, you have to fix it. If your friends send you the documents, the work for the group work, and they did this kind of mistakes, you have to help them to fix. Okay, work together and fix the problems. And then the third one is don't include anything that is not a statement. Yeah, we learned already in the chapter 3, yeah, or chapter 2. We said that only statements are allowed in the arguments. If it is non-statement, there are some kind of exceptions. It depends on the content of that exceptions, but in most of the case, we don't keep the non-statement form in the arguments, isn't it? So in this case, the first statement is okay, no problem. The second statement with the term therefore, it is the indicator for conclusion, isn't it? So why should I care about politics mean what? This is the rhetorical questions. Why should I care means I don't really care, isn't it? So that is the conclusion, and that is important information that we should not remove, but we need to rewrite it into the statement form. It's not difficult to identify this kind of mistake, isn't it? It is very much common in our daily life, and you often make this kind of mistakes. So fix it. Therefore, I have no reason to care about politics. And why should I care? I mean, I don't really care, isn't it? Or I don't care at all. So the way you write is okay. But at least you convert your arguments from the conclusion with the question form into the statement form. Okay? And the last but not least, the mistake is you include something that is not a premise or conclusion. So do you remember that sometimes we say so many things, then somehow the things we said doesn't support our conclusion at all, and it's actually not relevant at all. So it plays no the role, the premise, neither the conclusion. So we could say that in this case, we don't have to keep this kind of information, isn't it? Now, that is the mistake. It happened because you try to say so many things and you may make this kind of mistakes, even conflict or contradictory, isn't it? So now, let's look at this example here. Could you please tell me which statement has the problem and why? Which statement has the problem? Right. Bích Liễu got the answers, and Bích Liễu said, let me see, Bích Liễu, this is your first bonus for today. Bích Liễu said that, right, number 1 doesn't support the conclusion, isn't it? And why could we see that? I'm not sure if you guys noticed this, but why Bích Liễu said so. So please look at the original information here. We see that, all right, here the argument has 4 statements, isn't it? And it seems like the fourth one is the conclusion. We have the word therefore. So therefore, capital punishment is not morally wrong. And then we have the justification from 2, 3. So this conclusion is met based on the premise 2, 3. That is one of the way to say that one has no relation, no role in the argument, isn't it? And if we read in detail for the content, we will see that in the statement number 1 say, many people argue that capital punishment is morally wrong, isn't it? But then the conclusion is trying to say, to prove that capital punishment is not morally wrong. So in this case, like our friend Bích Liễu said, the premise, the statement number 1 doesn't support the conclusion at all, but in other words, actually it against or it conflicts with the conclusion. How can you make an argument and you try to provide information and that information conflict with your argument, your conclusion? That is not good, isn't it? And if you remember back to the previous chapter, I had a funny story. I asked if a girlfriend asks a boyfriend, why do you like me? Why do you love me? And the boyfriend, of course, tried to please the girls and tried to say so many reasons, isn't it? And at the end, he said, oh, like my ex-girlfriend. So it destroyed the whole conversation, the whole relationship, isn't it? So be careful in the case that you try to say so many things, try to provide so many reasons, somehow it may have some kind of conflict information or even irrelevant information, like in this case. Okay, so yeah, like Bích Liễu said, in this case, number 1 doesn't support the conclusion at all. Somehow it against the conclusion. Got it? So those are the 4 mistakes that we could see in very common and often many people face it. So you need to aware of that, and also you need to find out if you have the mistakes like this and you have to fix it. Okay? So in summaries, today we learn the analyzing of the arguments, and remember analyzing means what? Means break it up into parts to understand, okay? The conclusion and the backgrounds or the support of that conclusion. And also for the analyzing the arguments, if we have the argument in short type, then we diagram it. And there are 6 steps for diagramming the argument, the short arguments, and also for the longer arguments in which the content is confusing, something may be missed. It doesn't need to be longer than with more words, but it has some kind of confusions there. Then we do the standardizing. And there are 5 steps of standardizing. Some of the steps will be very much similar with the diagram steps, but some are different, especially in filling the missing part and in adding the justification. Okay, adding the justification then help us no need to draw the diagram. Still, we know where is conclusion, and that is the conclusion. Then where are the premises of that conclusion? Got it? So I think that is all for today. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. For the diagramming of the short arguments or the standardizing of the longer arguments, please ask. And I want to just have quick information that we have 4 students who hasn't got the script. I'm not sure they still take the course or they drop it already. Just let me read it, okay? If you are here, please respond. Nguyễn Lâm Bảo Anh. Okay, are you here? I saw you took the midterm exam, so I haven't seen you got the script. Bảo Anh, Nguyễn Lâm Bảo Anh, Bùi Thị Xuân Lan. Oh, you, Xuân Lan, today you got several bonuses. You haven't got the script, Xuân Lan? Xuân Lan, I don't see the group numbers in your name. Tăng Phước Thịnh. Xuân Lan, you want to say something?
She says in group 3.
Group 3? Oh, you're in group 3, really? Did you just join the group or something wrong? I missed your group. Oh, group 3, only 4 members. So Xuân Lan in group 3. Thanks for reading. I didn't look at the chat box. And how about the last one? Let me see. The name is Võ Ngọc Hoàng Thông. Are you here? Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Hoàng Thông, are you here? I saw you did so far most of the quiz, and I think you also took the midterm exam. Hoàng Thông, yeah. So so far with the 4 names, then 3 of you took the midterm exam. Bảo Anh, Xuân Lan already got the grip, and Hoàng Thông. And Phước Thịnh didn't take the midterm exam, so it is okay. Maybe he dropped the course. How about the 2? Hoàng Thông and Bảo Anh, you guys need to find the group. Okay? And yeah, I'm still waiting for the questions if you have. And at the meantime, I want to just at least hear the voice, or if possible, see the face of some of the friends. I'm going to call the name, okay? Võ Nguyễn Trúc Quỳnh. Trúc Quỳnh, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, Trúc Quỳnh. And another one, Ngô Lâm Đức Hạnh.
Yes, miss.
Okay, and wait and Phạm Thị Ngọc Thảo.
Yes, teacher.
Okay, and Đặng Phương Vi.
Yes.
Okay. And Nguyễn Hoàng Hải Yến.
Yes.
Okay. Just have a very quick attendance check to our friends there. Some more. Let's say, wow. Bùi Thị Xuân Lan, just now I called already, right? Not bad. Very good. Đoàn Thị Thùy Danh.
Yes.
All right. And okay, I think that is all I could call. There are more, but just some names I want to check. And very big congratulations to Võ Nguyễn Trúc Quỳnh. You got the highest score for the midterm exam in our class. Bravo. And the other names that I just called also got high score, although it's less than Trúc Quỳnh, but also the top in the class. We have some more as the good news. Many of you got high score, but still the bad news is some of you have under 50. So for those who will receive under 50 on the EduSoft, then please be careful, behave well, and performs better in the class for the bonus and also the group presentation and the final exam. Okay, otherwise you will fail the course, and it will be very sad for that. All right, so the score is ready already, but I need to upload it into the EduSoft so that you guys can access and check by yourself. All right, so is there any questions so far for today class? And I'm really sad to say that maybe we have to study all of the course for the whole semester online. It means that I cannot see any of you directly. So you see that you can just see my faces, right? So somehow you recognize me in the class, not in the campus someday if we get back to. So hopefully you can recognize me, okay? And just say hello teacher if possible. But for me, my side, I don't really know any of you. That is sad for me. Okay, for the previous semesters, sometimes I saw the student half of the first semester or half of the last semester. But for this semester, I think that all of the students only, I cannot have direct communication. It's really sad. Okay, so I know it's hard to study online, of course, but we have to adapt to it. I'm not sure you enjoy studying online or not, or enjoying not to see the teacher like this. How is your response? Is there anything that I should improve for the later half of the semester that you suggest me to? Or is it okay, everything so far is good, or something like that? Please provide some kind of feedback. Yeah?
Teacher, can I make sure something?
Yes, please, Trung.
About presentation because I didn't join the class soon, so I scared of missing some information. Can you notice this?
Oh, yeah. So today I just mentioned a little bit about the presentation. We will have the class this week. Yeah, we almost finished. And next week we'll have the lecture for chapter 8 and chapter 10. And the week after next week, then you guys started to present. It means that for our class, you will have the presentation from 1st of December. Your first presentation day is 1st of December. Isn't it? Wait, right? Yeah. Today is 17. Next week we study 24th of November. That is all done for the lectures. And then your presentations will start from the 1st of December. True. That is all.
Thank you, teacher.
Yeah. Yes. Anyone else want to ask something?
Teacher, for the score of the quiz and home blackboard, can you upload it?
I'm waiting for the TA to send me back. For the other 3 classes, the quiz score is already available on Blackboard. So I uploaded, but for our class, the TA hasn't finished, so I haven't uploaded. If I receive it, I will upload it on the Blackboard, and you guys can see your quiz score. For the midterm score, you need to check on EduSoft. I will not upload on Blackboard. Okay? Tuan, is it okay?
Okay, teacher.
Yeah. Yes. Anyone else want to ask anything? And I forgot to inform. When you receive the score on EduSoft for the midterm exam, if you think that the score doesn't really match what you expect, for example, it's too high from what you expect, or it's too low, then you can have some kind of complaint by emailing me. Okay, if email me and ask to check for the score. It is, I think, a week after the score is informed, then you still have the right to check. But after that, there's no. So check it and make sure if you think it's too high, inform me. I will reduce the score. Okay, if it's too low, we'll see. All right, get it? Anything else? Anything else you want to say or ask? Yeah, no question from yeah, I'm not sure when you did the midterm exam online, maybe some of you got the problem with the internet from your side, but I hope none of you had the problem. But I already informed you guys, okay? If you receive any problems during the exam, you need to inform me immediately so I can help to solve the problem. Okay, if you don't inform me, I assume that everything is okay from your side, from my side. Okay, so take it for the final exam also. Please inform me whenever you receive a problem during the exam. The internet is not working, you are like your battery is out, your electricity was down or something like that. Okay, now last question. Is there any questions for me? If no, then today's class is finished and we'll see each other next week as the last lecture. After that is the presentation. And especially for those who got very low score or under 50 for the midterm exam, try to get bonus for yourself. Okay, save yourself. No one can save